So welcome this morning to the conjoined meeting of Dumfries and Galloway's Divisional Licensing Boards, commencing today, the 6th of October 2023 at 10:30. I'll trust that everyone can hear me clearly. If we could turn our attention, please, to the agenda. Item number 1, can we appoint a convener for this meeting, please?
I suggest Ivor Hislop if he's in.
I do have an apology from Councillor Hislop. I'll just check that he's not present and that apology is still standing. Yeah, I can take it he's not with us today. But thank you for that nomination. Councillor Driver, would anyone like to nominate another individual for convener this morning?
Can I nominate Stephen Thompson?
Anyone to second that?
I'm happy to second that, but I thought it would to be a convener.
Actually, normally it is a convener, but there's nothing to preclude an individual from convening the conjoined meeting who is not a convener, Councillor Dryborough. So we don't necessarily need to have a convener from a board to convene the conjoined meeting.
Okay, happy to second that then.
Councillor Thompson, are you happy to assume the role of convener?
Yeah, that's fine. If it's okay, can you give us a moment? Because I'm in the Council HQ building and I can make my way through to the chamber if that might be helpful. If you allow me a minute to do that.
Of course.
Okay, just bear with me, folks. Thank you. Okay, that's me in position now. Thank you. I'm okay to proceed, Abby, is that fine? Thank you. So good morning, members. Welcome to the conjoined meeting. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available for viewing through the Licensing Board's webpage. Please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones, switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. Please don't repeat the contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it's intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. All members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. So I think that, and I think that takes us on to Sedran and apologies. Can I approve members' remote participation, and can I maybe ask to provide Sedran and apologies as well, please? Thank you.
Thank you, convener. If I may, I'll just go through a roll call in respect of each board just to ascertain who's here and who is not. In respect of Annandale and Estill board, I have apologies from Councillor McGregor. If I may, can I ask, is Councillor Ian Carruthers present?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Karen Carruthers?
I think she's an apology, Caroline.
Thank you. Councillor Dryborough?
I'm here.
Nice and bright there, thank you. Councillor Jameson?
That may be Councillor Davis, if it's Annandale and Estill.
I've got down here a Councillor George Jameson.
Oh, beg your pardon, sorry, Caroline.
Oh, that's okay, not at all. Is Councillor Jameson with us this morning? No, I'll mark Councillor Jameson down as an apology.
I see him on. I actually see him, Caroline.
Yeah.
On the
Oh,
screen,
you
Caroline,
do?
he's on the screen, so he might be having an internet problem.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Jameson, can you hear me okay? Okay, we'll move on to Councillor McGregor. I've got her apologies, and Councillor Thompson, you've been nominated convener. And we can see Councillor Jameson on screen. It may be having internet issues. Okay, thank you. So we are quorate with the Annandale and Estill board. Moving on to Nithsdale. We have apologies from Councillor Dorward and Councillor Hislop. Councillor Beretti, you present? Can you hear me?
Sadly, yes, I can, but
Thank
it's
you.
very intermittent, Caroline.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. We do have our Mr. Byrne, our technical individual there, see if he can assist.
I'm afraid it's not at your end, it's at my end.
It's your end? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear
Extenuating
that.
circumstances.
Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, present, Caroline.
Thank you. Councillor Dorward and Hislop has submitted apologies. Councillor Jordan?
Hi, Caroline. Yes, I'm here.
Good morning. Thank
Good
you.
morning.
And Councillor Little?
Present and accounted for.
Thank you. So the board for Nithsdale board is quorate. Moving on to Stewartry. Councillor Beretti?
Sadly, I'm still here.
You're still here. Councillor Campbell? Is Councillor Campbell with us this morning? Moving on to Councillor Howie.
Present.
Good morning, Councillor Howie. We have apologies from Councillor Lowe. Councillor McFarlane.
Yes, I'm here, thanks.
So we are quorate with 3. Just going back to Councillor Campbell.
I see he's declined in the chat.
He's declined. So I'll mark Councillor Campbell down for apologies, but we are quorate. And moving on to the Wigtown board, Councillor Dashford. Councillor Dashford here this morning. I have not received any apologies in advance of this morning's meeting. Councillor Giusti. Councillor Hagman.
Yes, I'm here, Caroline, although
Good
not so bright
morning.
and bushy. So thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hagman. Councillor Hill.
Yes, I'm here. I'm not sure if Andrew will be able to make it. I know he was going to try, but he is working today. So he did say if he wasn't on to give an apology. Whether he can log in later, I'm not too sure.
Okay. Councillor Ingalls. Councillor McCammon. Okay, I'll just go through the roll call again. Convener for the Wigtown boards, because I only have 2 marked as present. Councillor Dashford, are you present?
Hi there,
with us?
just logged on.
Thank you. Councillor Giusti. Okay. Councillor Giusti marked as an apology. Convener, we have Councillor Hagman, we have Councillor Hill. Councillor Ingalls. Marked as an apology.
Councillor Ingalls has just sent me a message saying he's apologising, he's running late, he's hoping to get on it, but he's dealing with the situation at the moment. So
thank you very much. And Councillor McCammon. Okay, at the moment I have Councillors Giusti, Ingalls and McCammon down as apologies at the moment, but we are quorate convener with the Wigtown board, so we're now quorate with all 4 boards and we can proceed. Thank you.
Thanks for going through that, Caroline. And we might as well strike while the iron's hot. So that takes us on to item 4. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Item 3, declarations of interest from anybody. Okay, I'm not seeing anything no hands up or anything coming up in the chat at the moment. So on that basis, we'll proceed to item 4, which is the Licensing Scotland Act 2005, Sections 6 and 7, renewal of Statement of Licensing Policy and Duty to Assess Over Provision. I'm just wondering if you'd like to take us through the report, and then we can invite members' comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. So at this morning's meeting, you're being asked to agree and finalise the terms of the Board's draft licensing policy statement for the year 2023 to 2028. In terms of the law, this revised statement must be published by the 4th of November this year. And the draft policy statement, members, including the assessment on over provision, is detailed at Appendix 1 to the report. Just a wee brief history here. You'll recall that at a conjoined meeting in January this year, members agreed a public consultation programme in respect of the review, and also agreed separate divisional board meetings to take place in respect of the review. The first informal consultation took place for a 4-week period in the 31st of January to the 28th of February this year. And then a more comprehensive second consultation took place from the 1st of April to the 15th of June this year, asking specific questions in relation to different policy areas. You'll recall that a total of 46 responses were received across the region in respect of these consultations, and each board held individual meetings in August and September 2023 to consider responses received in respect of their own board areas. Each individual board also received a presentation from NHS Dumfries and Galloway in respect of over provision. So following conclusion of these separate meetings, just to briefly go over what each board individually agreed at their separate meetings. For the Nithsdale board, they agreed to retain their on-sales licensed hours and make no changes, in respect of outdoor areas. They did agree to adopt a terminal hour in respect of outdoor areas, and to include some narrative in respect of the operation of those areas in respect of monitoring staff. In respect to the licensing objectives, they agreed not to follow any of the suggestions because they were either covered within the policy statement or enshrined in law or just out with the remit of the board. And the Nithsdale board determined that there's no over provision of licensed premises in Nithsdale. In respect of Wigtown, they agreed to retain existing on sale licensed hours and make no changes. They decided not to adopt an outside drinking policy and determine each case in its own merits, as it had done to date, but it did agree to include some narrative in respect of the use of plastic glasses in outdoor drinking areas. In terms of it did agree to adopt an LSO suggestion in relation to including the board's festive hours policy. The board agreed not to follow the suggestions in relation to promotion of the licensing objectives for the same reasons as the Nithsdale board, and it also determined that there was not enough evidence to make a determination that there was over provision in relation to the Wigtown board area. Stewardship also agreed to retain existing on sales hours, not to adopt an outdoor drinking policy. In relation to the licensing objectives, it also, as per the other boards, agreed not to follow suggestions for the promotions for the same reasons. It did agree a suggestion from the LSO in relation to the police drugs policy, and it determined that there was no over provision of licensed premises in Stewardship. With regard to the Annandale and Eskdale board, agreed to retain existing on-sales licensed hours and make no changes. It also decided not to adopt an outdoor drinking policy and consider each case on its own merits. With regard to the licensing objectives, it decided not to follow the suggestions offered by those who responded to the consultation, and the reasons being the same as the other boards. In respect of an LSO suggestion, it agreed to adopt a local condition requested and by the LSO in respect of over provision. It determined that there's no over provision of licensed premises in its board area. So that's just a wee bit of history in respect of each individual board. So members, you can see at Appendix 1, we have the draft policy statement. And there's lots of red track changes there in respect of some sundry changes, which are just general tidying up provisions. There's a wee bit about the Section 142 statutory guidance. There's some have been inserted in respect of just the licensing team. Obviously asking your approval, but we can give reasons why we're requesting changes to be made. What I'm suggesting, convener, with your approval, of course, maybe the easiest way of dealing with this is when we go, if you go to the recommendations detailed on page 6 of this report at paragraph 9, and maybe I just go through each recommendation in respect of each individual board. And then we move on to paragraph 9.5 and go through the suggested amendments in respect of all 4 boards, bringing everybody in, if that's okay.
Thanks, Caroline. I was looking at the page 6 there, and I thought it might be useful just to invite the members of the respective boards, so starting with Nithsdale, to maybe see if they have any particular questions, and then allow them to consider approval of each recommendation. So between the 2 of us, potentially, we could probably do that, if that's okay. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add to the Nithsdale one specifically, but Nithsdale board members, you'll see there on page 6 at 9.1.1 is about considering approving the terms of the outdoor drinking policy as detailed. Obviously, Caroline can assist with any questions. I don't know if you want to say a word about that initially, Caroline, before seeing what members feel.
Thank you, convener. So just recalling in respect of the outdoor drinking area, the suggested narrative at page 7 of the appendix 1, it's detailed at paragraph 1.6.15. I appreciate, there's lots of numbers being thrown around here, but it's actually page 7 of the draft policy statement. And you'll recall, members of the Nithsdale board, that at your meeting on the 31st of August this year, you decided to invoke a 10 p.m. terminal out in respect of the outdoor drinking area. So the draft narrative is detailed in the report. You also agreed that no music would be audible in the outside drinking area post 10 p.m. And then you agreed that the board expects noise within outdoor drinking areas to be reasonable at all times, and that staff should monitor outdoor drinking areas at reasonably frequent intervals to ensure that patrons are acting responsibly pursuant to the Preventing Public Nuisance Licensing objective. So you're being asked whether you approve the terms of this suggested narrative in respect of the outdoor drinking area.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. So Nithsdale board members, any questions, or are you happy to approve? I suppose that would include 9.1.1 and 9.1.2, which relate to the same paragraph.
Yes, I beg your pardon. Thank you, convener.
Okay. Thank you. I can see a hand up, unfortunately. I'm not sure who it is on the screen here. Councillor John Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Yeah, I'm content with the what's in the report. I think it's quite a sensible solution, especially when you've got licensed premises and residential in close proximity. If you do have, it also reiterates that if you have a licensed premises that don't have residential, and then they'll be treated on a case-by-case basis. So I'm content with everything that was in the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Little?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we had much discussion at the Nithsdale board regarding this, and I'm content with our outcome then, and I stand by it now. So happy with what's in the papers.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Beretti?
Yeah, just to confirm what both Councillors Campbell and Little have said, we did have extensive discussions, and it was we thought that was the best solution for this particular region. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I don't see any other hands up to speak. I'll take that as being Nithsdale members approving the terms for both 9.1.1 and 9.1.2. So that's good, thank you. So that takes us on then to 9.2 for Wigton board members. And again, Caroline, if you could maybe assist with this just in terms of some of the detail before members come in with comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. So members of the Wigtown board have been asked to consider approving the terms of the plastic glass narrative detailed, at paragraph 1.6 point 15 of the draft policy statement, which is also on page 7 of the draft policy statement. That it's just under the Nithsdale Board, and it's stating that the board expects consideration to be given to the use of plastic glasses in outdoor drinking areas. This was something that was agreed at the Wigtown Board's individual meeting on the 12th of September. So it's expecting consideration to be given. So it's a kind of like soft power request rather than a kind of mandatory requirement, and members have been asked to approve the terms of that suggested narrative.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. So we'll deal with that one first because the other one relates to something a little bit different. But so, Wigtown board members, are you content with that, or there's any comments or questions you have on 1.6.15 of the policy statement? Councillor Giusti.
Chair, I'm happy to go with that. Quite content with what we discussed at the Wigtown Board.
Thank you, Councillor Giusti. Is there anyone otherwise minded, or is there any other questions or comments from Wigtown board members? Okay, I'm not seeing any other contributions wanting to be made, so we'll take that as being approved. Thank you. And that takes us on to 9.2.2 around the festive hours policy. So again, Caroline, if you can maybe assist with this a little bit, just for a bit of context, thank you.
Thank you, Convener. So the board's been asked to note the inclusion of the board's festive hours policy detailed at paragraph 1.14.2 of the draft policy statement, which may be found on page 18. The board agreed this at its individual meeting, and it states it's just basically given the signposting as to what has already been agreed. It's just putting into the draft policy statement the festive hours policy that already existed, just putting forward those dates. They're just asking to be noting the inclusion.
Okay, thank you. So Wigtown board members content with that?
Yeah, I'm content with that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hill, and I can see a thumbs up from Councillor Giusti. So no one seems otherwise minded, so I think we can take that as being, well, we're noting the inclusion, so that's fine. And then 9.2.3, the revision to the paragraph at 1.14.4. Again, Caroline, just for a little bit of context to remind Wigtown board members.
Thank you, Convener. So at page 19, you'll notice there's track change in red, the last bullet point, in relation to your policy in relation to children and young persons that's already been in place, inserting just that extra exception to the policy that the above is without prejudice to those children and young persons who reside within licensed premises. For example, if children and young persons are residing in a hotel with a premises licence, then clearly the policy for them to vacate the premises, for example, by 10 p.m. would not apply, because they'd be residing in the licensed premises, for example, if it was a hotel. So it's just a wee tidying up provision there that members are being asked to consider to approve.
Thanks, Caroline. Seems eminently sensible. Wigtown board members, are you happy to approve that revision?
Happy to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Hill, and also I see a thumbs up again from Councillor Giusti. So let's proceed. So that takes us to 9.3 for stewardship board members, and that's the inclusion of the police drugs policy to be adopted as a local condition as detailed. Once again, Caroline, if you could assist members.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. So members have been asked to note the inclusion of the police drugs policy to be adopted as a local condition. It's detailed at paragraph 2.1.4 of the draft policy statement. If I can turn your attention, members, to page 23 of the draft policy statement, you'll see the police drugs policy. This was agreed by yourselves at your individual meeting on the 13th of September this year. It's just bringing you in line with all the other three divisional boards in relation to adopting a local condition in relation to that police drugs policy. So it's just asking you to just to note that it's inclusion now because it was already agreed at your individual meeting last month.
Thank you, Caroline. So, members of the Stewardship Board, are you happy to note that inclusion?
Happy to note, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Howie. And I don't see any other hand. Oh, I beg your pardon. Yes. Sorry, who was that came in there?
Andy McFarlane. Happy to know.
Oh, thank you, Councillor McFarlane. Excellent. So that's Stewardship Board 9.3 noted. And then 9.4, Annandale and Estill Board members being asked to note the inclusion of the adoption of a local condition requiring premises licence holders to maintain a refusals register, etc. So again, Caroline, if you could please assist.
Yes, of course, Convener, thank you. So members are being asked just to note the inclusion of the adoption of this local condition. It's also on page 23 of the draft policy statement, just at paragraph 2.1.5. The board agreed at its meeting on the 15th of September to apply this local condition to bring it into line with the other 3 divisional boards. And also you'll note that there's deletion of paragraph 2.1.6 immediately under it in red. Previously 2.1.6 applied exclusively to the Annandale and Estill board, but they agreed at their individual hearing just to bring the local condition in relation to the refusals register to apply to their board. So they're just being asked to note the inclusion because it was already agreed at their individual board meeting last month.
Thank you, Caroline. Yes, and I think we probably remember discussing that. So Annandale and Estill board members, are we happy to note that inclusion? A thumbs up from
happy to note that.
Councillor Carruthers.
Yes, happy to go with that.
Thank you, Councillor Drybredt and Jameson. Excellent. So that takes us on to 9.5, which is for all 4 boards to consider. And this is where it maybe gets a bit more general. So we're firstly being asked to consider agreeing and finalising the terms of the licensing policy statement, including the over-provision statements, and the draft of which is included at Appendix 1. Caroline, again, I'll lean on you if that's possible, if you can please assist members with this.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. So just breaking that down, applying to all 4 boards, paragraph 9.5.2 of the recommendations, to consider agreeing the sundry changes that have been made to the draft policy statement. There's lots of sundry changes that are in red track change, and they're just general tidying up provisions or reflecting current dates in respect of the policy statement. You've been asked to agree them, but I'm happy to take any questions, Convener, in respect to the sundry changes. They're kind of like permeated throughout the draft policy statement.
Okay, thanks, Caroline. So sundry changes 9.5.2, presumably 9.5.1 is just about the terms, and again, we'll take questions on both of those items. So members, any questions for Caroline, or are we happy to agree the terms and the changes at 9.5.1 and 5.2?
If I can just interject there, Convener, and probably in hindsight, the 9.5.1 in relation to agreeing and finalising the terms of the policy statement probably should have came as the last bulleted point, because it's actually in capturing everything that you're being asked. So if we may, maybe start at paragraph 9.5.2 in respect of the sundry changes, and then we could maybe go through with your agreement, of course, the different kind of like changes, if that makes sense, because you are being asked fundamentally to agree and finalise the terms of the policy statement, yes, but we want to go through all of the other paragraphs before we get there. So it should have been probably a last bullet point. So I do apologise for putting it in as a first.
No, that totally makes sense. So on that logic, we'll take that one last. So 9.5.2 members, any questions for Caroline, or are we happy to agree?
Happy to agree.
Thank you. And we can also see thumbs up in the room from Councillor Carruthers. Anyone otherwise minded, or any questions for Caroline? No? Okay. On that basis, we can take that as being agreed. So that takes us to 9.5.3, which is the amended paragraph 1.6.6. in respect of the clarity with regard to delegation to the convener at each board. So, Caroline, if you could maybe expand on that one a little bit, thank you.
Thank you, Convener. So if I can draw your attention to page 5 of the draft policy statement at paragraph 1.6.6 in relation to delegations to the conveners of each board. The first bullet point, authority to decide whether any application for a premises licence review is vexatious or frivolous. That reflects the statutory position, but also included in the statutory provision is that it does not disclose any matter relevant to any ground for review. So we're just asking for that to be included to reflect what is actually in the statute. Next bullet point, authority to decide an application for an occasional licence that's not attracted an objection or representation, but requests hours that are out with policy, because sometimes we get occasionals requesting hours that are out with policy, but there's no objection or representation. So just suggesting that could be a matter delegated to the convener. The same position being in respect of an application for an extended hours, whereby there's no objection or representation, but it's a request and out with policy hours for it to be going to the convener, and authority to determine applications for occasional licences that have attracted objections or representations, including authority to reject an objection or representation if it's considered vexatious or frivolous. And just fleshing out in respect of occasional licences or extended hours that are lodged late, we're saying the 28 days in respect of an occasional and 14 days in respect of an extended hours. So just defining what we actually mean as late. And we've taken out reference in that bullet point to deputy clerk because it's not a statutory position. So whom failing the clerk, and taking out that next bullet point, which is actually already included in the above.
Thank you, Caroline. So it sounds like it'll bring a bit of consistency, which is helpful usually. So, board members, are we content to agree those amendments in terms of the delegation to convener? Thank you, Councillor Drybra. Any other comments? Thumbs up from Councillor Carruthers in the room. Councillor Beretti?
Yeah, I agree, as has been written down by Caroline.
Thank you. So I don't see any other hands up or have any other comments coming in, so we'll take that as agreed. That takes us to 9.5.4, which is the amended paragraph 1.613, and that's the details of the areas across Dumfries and Galloway covered by the Council's bylaws, prohibiting consumption of alcohol in designated public places. I know I'd raised this maybe in another forum just about asking for a review, a periodic review of this so that the public could have sight of this, but I don't know if you can maybe touch on that when you elaborate on this one, Caroline. Thank you.
Yes, of course, convener, it's your favourite topic, isn't it? So yeah, the LSO had asked for reference to the Council's bylaws, just to be briefly referenced in the policy statement, just stating the areas in which the bylaws are in place. Now, obviously, reviewing the bylaws is a council function. It's not a board function. And my understanding is that they are either currently being reviewed or they intend to be reviewed by legal, not by with licensing. So the LSO had just wanted, LSOs had wanted, beg your pardon, reference to the areas in which we do have council bylaws. So we've made brief reference to it for your approval for inclusion in the draft policy statement, but just to say the caveat is that the reason we're not kind of fleshing out the full details here is because they are requiring to be reviewed in law, and to put them in, you know, when they're going to be reviewed at some point, my understanding in the early future doesn't really make much sense. So it's just giving a heads up as to the areas in which we do have bylaws as requested by the LSOs, and you're just being asked to include reference to the bylaws in the policy statement.
Thanks, Caroline, and it helps clarify and make it a bit more transparent just what the current status is, so I'm certainly pleased with that. But any other members want to comment, or Councillor Carruthers?
Thanks very much, Convener. Caroline, you're saying that Legal Services is undertaking a review of the bylaws. I just wonder, as part of that review, is that like an administration thing, or will they go out for consultations, say, to an area committee? Thank you.
I cannot answer that question, Councillor Carruthers, definitively, but I'm happy to look into it and get back to you. There is a statutory procedure the Council requires to go through when it is reviewing its bylaws. My understanding is that there is a consultation. I'm not clear with whom, and it does involve notification requirements to the Scottish Government as well. But I can look into it and get back to you if that's okay.
Very much appreciate it. I remember at the time when the bylaws came in, it was an extensive consultation, to say the least. So. Good to hear that. Thanks, Caroline.
No worries. It's just that licensing, I've never dealt with the bylaws. It has always been legal understanding to date, but I can look into it and get back to you.
Thank you for that. So that's helpful, and I'd certainly welcome if that could be shared with board members if required.
Yes, of course.
Thanks, Caroline. So any other members with questions on 9.5.4, or are we happy to agreeing that amended paragraph?
Agreed.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up, so we'll press on.
No,
then.
agreed.
Oh, right. Thank you, Councillor Beretti. 9.5.5 then is agreeing the amended paragraph 1.637 in respect of occasional licences. And again, Caroline, if you could maybe speak to this a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. So you've been asked to consider agreeing the amended paragraph 1.6.37, which is found at the top of page 10 of the draft policy statement in respect of occasional licences. Just taking out reference, first of all, to tying occasional licences to events, because the new case law came out that the board cannot tie occasional licences to events. You don't need events. Either a ground of refusal exists in relation to an occasional licence and you must refuse, or a no ground of refusal exists and you must grant. So we've done a wee bit tidying up at paragraph 1.6.37, saying that the board expects an application for a full premises licence or major variation to be submitted if you've had that period of 3 months with occasional licences. However, we cannot legally compel that to be the case because there is no numerical cap in respect to occasional licences other than voluntary organisations. And then just deleting the paragraph underneath, tying occasionals to events. So you're just being asked to approve that paragraph as newly revised.
Thanks, Caroline. Are we happy to approve that, members?
Approved.
Thank you. And I can see a nodding head in the room. So
Approved, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Beretti. So excellent. So that takes us on to 9.5.6, which is considering agreeing a new paragraph 1.639 in respect of occasional licences for individual stalls.
Thank you, Convener. So paragraph 1.6.39, the new paragraph 4 is detailed at page 10 of the draft policy statement. We've done it new paragraph 4 in blue for ease of reference. Thanks for that, Sharon. You've been asked in respect of farmer markets and other similar events, which include the operation of more than one trading stall, an occasional licence is required in respect of each stall that wishes to sell alcohol. To date, we've had many operators who think that they can have lots of individual stalls, each selling alcohol, and there's one occasional in respect of the whole farmers market, which makes it a lot more difficult to actually supervise and authorise the sale of alcohol. And given that occasional licences are still the statutory £10 fee, you've been asked to approve this new paragraph so that each stall requires an occasional licence in respect of farmers markets and other similar events.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Members, are we happy to agree that new paragraph?
I think that's imminently positive.
Thank you,
Agree.
Excellent. I think agree, Councillor Dryborough. That seems sensible. And also thank you, Councillor Beretti. Councillor Carruthers, I think you gave another thumbs up. So excellent. And anybody otherwise minded? Splendid. Okay, thank you. So that's agreed. Then 9.5.7 is the new bullet point after 1.12.1 or N5. in respect of the submission of extended hours applications. A few words on this one, Caroline, please.
Thank you, Convener. So if I can turn your attention, members, to page 17 of the draft policy statement, and again in delightful blue N.5, which is a requested new paragraph to take advantage of the above additional hours, which are detailed above this red track change. All 4 boards shall require submission and grant of an extended hours application unless this is specifically referenced in the operating plan. So if you wish to take advantage of extra hours, then you must have it in your operating plan or submit an extended hours application.
Okay, thank you. Members, any comments or questions?
Just maybe one question, Chair, and thanks, Caroline, for doing that. If it is in the operating plan when they get their, the premise licence and things like that, it may be that it's for certain times of the year. And are we looking at that? You look at Christmas and weddings and Easter and that type of thing, where people do sometimes have extended hours. If it's not in the operating plan, they have to apply for it. If it is in the operating plan, how are we going to monitor that?
That's a good question. Well, if they have the extended hours or festive hours policies, etc., in their operating plan, how would we monitor it? I don't have an absolute definitive answer there. How would we monitor it? It's a permissive. If, say, for example, the premises are permitted to trade for, over the festive period for an extra hour or so, how would we monitor it? Well, they would not be permitted to go beyond that hour. Any other, they would be in breach of their licence if they operated their premises, Councillor Driver, beyond that hour. But in terms of monitoring, it would be like any other licence, whether it was brought to our attention that they had exceeded the terms of their licence or they exceeded that terminal hour, whether it be a police bringing it to our attention or somebody else. But we as a board, we would expect or hope that it would be brought to our attention. But in terms of active monitoring, I don't know if Sharon, if you've got anything else to add there, but in terms of active monitoring, I don't think the position would change any differently, but certainly they would require to have it either expressly stipulated in their operating plan, and they can only sell alcohol in respect of the operating plan, else it's breach of a condition, or they would submit an extended hours application.
Thanks, Caroline. If it's okay, Councillor Driver, I'll invite Sharon just to say a couple of words on that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. Just as Caroline's going to say, just to add to that, Councillor Driver, I mean, if it's in their operating plan, they're obviously permitted to use it. They don't have to. So we would take it as they will use it unless we're advised otherwise, basically. So we looking at a board area, for example, if say 60% of the premises have the seasonal variation to allow those opening times, and we would assume that they would be using those unless we're advised otherwise.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks to both yourself and Caroline for those responses. Happy with that.
Okay, thank you. So on that basis, and with that being addressed, can we agree the new paragraph?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you. So that takes us on to N3, I think it is, in terms of... I beg your pardon, 9.5.8, considering agreeing new paragraph after 1.15.2 N2 in respect of home deliveries. So again, Caroline, if you can maybe elaborate on this one, thank you.
Thank you, Convener. So if I can turn your attention to page 19 of the draft policy statement at the bottom, new paragraph 2, which is detail N2 at the bottom of page 19, you're being asked to consider agreeing this new paragraph in respect of home deliveries, just acknowledging that concerns were raised by NHS Dumfries and Galloway in relation to their presentation for over-provision, that they were concerned about increased levels of online sales of alcohol. and just stating that the board encourages applicants for premises licences, which include online sales, to provide the board with details of how the deliveries will operate already in terms of the law. You know, you cannot have your alcohol deliveries between midnight and 6 a.m. and just advising applicants that the boards will expect these matters to be addressed. For example, what steps will be taken to verify the age of the person ordering and accepting the delivery, the use of age verification policies. So it's a new paragraph in respect of home deliveries and just a sort of signposting as to what the boards will expect from an applicant.
Thank you. I'm just conscious, I've been informed Councillor McFarlane has stepped out, so we are not fully quorate at this moment in terms of the Stewardship Board, but we can take a question, I think, from Councillor Dryborough just now, if it helps clarify. Councillor Dryborough?
Yeah, Chair, it's not a question, it's more a comment. I think we've asked this question on several times at Annandale and Eskdale Board, and I'm pleased to see this actually in the report, and I'm extremely happy with it being there, actually, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I think it's, I know we've discussed, I think maybe it's a sign of the times that this has become more and more of a consideration, so it's good to have that reflected in an appropriate way. Councillor Beretti?
Yeah, you just took the words out of my mouth there, Chair. Sign of the times, it's going to become more prevalent, this type of transaction, so it certainly needs to be included.
Thank you, Councillor Beretti. So we might be in an odd position where...
Yes. Is Councillor are we not quorate now with the Stewardship Board? Forgive me, is that the case?
So I'll just get Sharon to confirm. Thank you.
Yes, I believe for Stewardship we've now only got Councillors Beretti and Howie in attendance, which leaves 2 members, so we would obviously need a 3rd member to be quorate. I just wondered if maybe we just, I don't know, Caroline or convener, if you want to come back to that one and perhaps discuss the next one before agreeing anything further, you know, talk about the content of the changes rather than actually making an agreement for anything at the moment.
That's, Sharon, may I ask, is Councillor McFarlane, did he advise he's coming back? Or?
He's back in now, I think.
I think he's just reappeared on the screen. I can now see an AM appeared on my row of people, I suppose. So I think with that, we can go to agree, I think, 9.5.8 if members are happy, given that we're now quorate again. Are we happy to agree?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. And that takes us 9.5.9. And again, this is another new paragraph at 1.15.2 in respect of premises that have ceased to be used for the sale of alcohol. So I don't know if you want to expand on this slightly, Caroline. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Convener. If I can turn your attention to page 20 of the draft policy statement, you've been asked to consider agreeing the new paragraph, delightfully in blue again, N3 at the top of page 20, in respect of premises which have ceased to be used for the sale of alcohol. It's a new paragraph that you've been asked to approve. So you'll be aware that if when premises have ceased to be used for the sale of alcohol, licence ceases to have effect. But we don't know what premises cease to be used for the sale of alcohol means, because there's no legal definition of that term. So this paragraph is reading, the board's considered the term to section 28 of the Act stating that a premises licence ceases to have effect where the premises cease to be used for the sale of alcohol. So what exactly does this mean? So it's just given a suggested heads up. It's aware that on one interpretation that this could be read as requiring an application for a new premises licence in the situations where, for example, the premises have ceased to trade and they've been actively marketed for sale. That the board will require an application for a new premises licence where the premises have not been used for the sale of alcohol for a period of 1 year, because there's many reasons why premises may cease to be used for the sale of alcohol. They may be being actively marketed for sale. They could have closed for a number of reasons for an interim basis. And on the one hand, they've ceased to be used for the sale of alcohol, so the premises licence is no longer in effect. Well, you want to kind of be looking at the reasons why before you would have a board hearing and make that decision. So just stating that the circumstances suggest that there's no active marketing of the premises for sale. However, before making any determination, the board will ask LSOs, who are always excellent, as you're aware, to ascertain where possible basically the reason for the closure of the premises on the ground, with a view to then deciding whether or not to review the premises licence. So it's a suggested new paragraph in relation to what you would maybe take into account in respect of the premises ceasing to be used for the sale of alcohol, and you would consider the premises licence possibly ceasing to have effect if they were closed for at least that period of 1 year.
Thanks, Caroline. So it's helpful in the sense that our licensing statement would be otherwise silent on this matter, I suppose. So, Councillor Dryborough?
Yeah, I think this is quite a sensible paragraph here, because renovations, for instance, of internals may take more than a year, and that would be told to the LSOs, and they can make that judgment. So I think this is a pretty important paragraph within the report.
Thanks, Councillor Dryborough. Any other contributions, or are we happy to agree the new paragraph?
Agreed.
Thank you, and I've got confirmation in the room as well. So thanks, members. That takes us to 9.5.10, the new paragraph at N.1 in respect of confirmation as suggested by statutory guidance. Caroline?
Thank you. Yes, of course, thanks, Convener. So if I can ask you to turn to page 19 of the draft policy statement, cast your eyes down to the delightful blue again, and N1, the new paragraph in respect to confirmation. This has just been transposed from the new section 142 statutory guidance, recommending that's contained within the new policy statement, stating that where an application is made for the confirmation of provisional premises licence, the board may make a variation to the conditions for the purpose of ensuring consistency with the policy since the licence was issued. It's just transposed from the statutory guidance, and that's why you've been asked to contain it within your policy statement.
Okay, again, this makes things a bit more consistent, so always helpful. Members, are we happy to agree that new paragraph?
Agreed.
Thank you. So that takes us to, well, I'm just looking at this, Caroline, and I'm wondering whether we should agree and finalise the terms before we remit to you the power to make copies. So I don't know if that's sensible. If we do that first. So if we go to 9.5.1, back at the start, which is effectively having done all these bits and pieces, if you like, if we consider agreeing and finalising the terms of the licensing policy statement, including over provision statements, the draft of which is detailed at Appendix 1. I don't know if you want to add anything to that in particular, Caroline, especially in terms of over provision, because again, that's been a subject of some discussion in terms of how we use data and what we'd be entitled to do when we link evidence-based decisions. So I don't know if you want to say a few words on that, and then we can go to the recommendation afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Convener. So that recommendation, which should have been the last one, is just considering agreeing and finalising the terms of your policy statement, which includes the over-provision assessment. The over-provision assessment will and is indeed annexed to the draft policy statement, that over-provision assessment having been submitted by Dumfries and Galloway NHS. And in respect of that policy statement, it states the position of the NHS Dumfries and Galloway, but your policy statement advises that no board found there to be over-provision within any of their areas. I'm just looking at where in the policy statement I've actually set in the other policy statement, the previous one, we just said all 4 boards, but in this one we've actually broken it down as page 21 in respect of each board, making that as you're required to do that statement in law as to whether you consider there to be over provision, and each board has stated no, and that decision coming from each board was when you all held each of your individual meetings and you had that presentation from NHS Dumfries and Galloway. So the assessment will be, and it is appended to this draft policy statement, once you agree the final terms of the policy statement, this assessment on over-provision will form part of the policy statement, but detailed at page 21 is what you've already agreed at your individual boards in August, September this year, and you all came to the same conclusion that there's no over-provision.
Thanks, Caroline. Councillor Carruthers.
Just as part of the Arndale and Estill discussion, there seemed to be a communication breakdown between NHS and Dumfries and Galloway Council. I just wonder, had that been resolved, round about over-provision in particular?
So, so I remember the discussion, and I think there does seem to be a gap, if you like, between boards requiring a causal link, I suppose, between a premises and consumption of alcohol directly related to health and or other issues. And the data that we're actually provided with doesn't really allow us to make any causal link, although we can quite clearly identify that there are issues in certain areas. So I think that was one of the, it's almost like would we ever be in a position where we could directly link to a specific premises? And I think that was raised. I don't know where the right forum for that is, Caroline, but I think there are national forums or ways of feeding that into other bodies. I don't know if you can maybe speak to that, because there does seem to be a bit of a mismatch. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, convener. So asking whether have you ever been in a position to find that causal link, that is a very golden question. That's a very difficult question in law, and it's one that I cannot give a definitive response. But I was asked to raise the matter at Solar, and Solar's next meeting is the 15th of December. The whole over provision in terms of that causal link between, you establish your alcohol related harms within a locality and finding that causal link to the availability of alcohol within that area. You'll recall in respect of all four boards that there was two specific caveats detailed in that assessment and over provision. Acknowledging, that almost undermining the data in a way, acknowledging that you cannot, to actually pinpoint where individuals are buying the alcohol is very, very difficult when you acknowledge the first caveat being that there's online sales. So many people are purchasing alcohol online. Others may be going out with the locality, possibly out with Dumfries and Galloway, possibly down to England, where there's no minimum unit price and alcohol is cheaper, specifically with Dumfries and Galloway being on that border. So it's very, very difficult to pinpoint where individuals are actually purchasing the alcohol, and that makes it a very, very difficult endeavour, in my view, to actually find that causal link in law. So I was asked by the Director of Public Health, Valerie White, who has emailed me since the meetings, asking me to raise it with Solar, and I shall do, to see if Solar can possibly approach the Scottish Government in relation to over-provision, and how do you establish that causal link, given that there's been an explosion in online sales of alcohol, particularly post-pandemic. Many more individuals are drinking alcohol, consuming alcohol in their home. Where did they purchase that alcohol from? Very difficult to know. How can you pinpoint that purchase to that locality if there is greater alcohol-related harms? It's a very, very complex area, but I shall be raising it, convener, with Solar to ask them to consider approaching the Scottish Government, and I can keep you all in the loop.
Thanks, Caroline. I think that's really helpful. Once we've reached the limits of what we can meaningfully do, obviously then we have to use the other mechanisms available to try and make it more digestible, I suppose, in terms of things working. So that'll be helpful. I'm sure members would want to stay in the loop on that one. I can see Councillor Jamieson's hand up.
Yeah, just very quickly, I'm very pleased that we're doing that, because I think it is really important that we're seen to acknowledge the challenges ahead of us. But we can't make policy decisions or even decisions if we don't know the details. So I think I support that very strongly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jamieson. And I hope that addresses your question, Councillor Carruthers, as well.
It is, Convener. I thought it was an excellent answer, and look forward to that updated, whatever the appropriate forum is. Thank you.
Thank you. So just out of interest, do we capture that as an action that board members will be kept updated as to any response from Solar or? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So members, in terms of actually the recommendation, So are we actually happy to consider agreeing and finalising the terms of licence policy statement?
Agreed.
Yeah, agree. Convener.
Okay, excellent. Too many voices there, but all saying agreed, so that's fine. Thank you. And that takes us finally to the last one, which is to delegate, just find the form of words, remit to the clerk the power to make copies of the licensing policy statement available for public inspection. So are we happy to agree that?
Agreed.
Yep. So a hand up, Councillor Dryborough.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm happy to agree that, but I just wanted to thank all of the team for putting our interest of the licensing board in place for this huge bit of work and making sure we were all clear in what we're doing in the future. But thanks to Caroline and Sharon and the team for doing all that.
I'm grateful for those comments, Councillor Driver. Thank you very much. The whole team are.
Thank you. And I can see a few hand claps and thumbs ups from members online. So, yeah, I mean, without yourself, Caroline, and yourself, Sharon, etc., this would have been a very different meeting. So, but your input and information and knowledge, as always, is very welcome. So, thanks again. But with that, I don't have any other business. So, I think that concludes the meeting. Thanks, everybody, for their participation today.
Thank you very much, members. Thank you, Sharon, and the rest of the team. Thank you.